Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. We have a long agenda, so if everyone could take their seats, we'll get this baby rolling. This is not a baby anymore, it's kind of a tour now. So we'll start with introductions. We'll start with Armando. Oh, we're starting with Drew because the microphone's apparently not Drew.
I'm Drew Dutcher, Elyria and Swansea Neighborhood Association.
Tina Martinez, Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
Mark Rodman, History, Colorado. Juan Veloz, LED, Swansea.
Jocelyn Middle, CSU.
Again, National Western Center Authority.
Paul Andrews, National Western Stock Show.
Terrence Carroll, co-facilitator.
Good evening, Brad Dodson, Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
John Sapien, bearer of Springtime News.
It won't be spring tomorrow, though. We'll be back to Colorado Spring.
And I love the stock show, and I love to be here every time. I'm from Elyria in Swansea.
Susan Aldredi from Councilwoman Ortega's office. Slavitz Apocki, Focus Points.
And Elizabeth Bloomfield.
Jeremy Rowland, Family Environmental.
Kayla Birdsong with the Grow House.
Armando Plana, Global.
I'm Liz Adams with CRL Associates and the National Western Stock Show, and I want to let you know that I got a lot of emails from people that are out on spring break this week, and a couple of notes. One, Dave Oletsky, who is usually here, I think is off at a candidate forum, as some of you may have heard. He's running for Denver City Council. He let me know that he would not be here. And then we have two other folks that were on spring break that are all excused. So now we'll have everybody in the audience say who they are and who they're representing.
Hi, good evening. Emily Haber with Denver's Office of Performance-Based Infrastructure.
Catherine Paradise, Elyria resident.
Banks Benitez, Uncharted. Matt Berry, National Western Center Authority.
Andrea Burns, National Western Center Authority. Jenna Espinosa Garcia, Communications Director for the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Mackenzie Taylor from MIG.
Jay Rankins with MIG.
Brian Lilly with Studio CPG. Anthony Aragon with the North Denver Cornerstone Collaborative.
Kai Holton Brown, National Western Stock Show.
Jocelyn Robinson, Workforce Development for the HIC. Excellent, and if it's okay, Terrence, I have one thing to do. Some of you may know, others of you may not know, we have a member of the CAC that is departing, and we're sad. Mark Rodman, who is with History Colorado, has taken a job in Michigan. And so tonight is his last meeting. He is actually leaving tomorrow. So he is spending his last evening in Denver with the CAC. I mean, what does that mean? So because he is doing that, we are going to acknowledge it by giving him a big prize. We've collected a few little things for you so that you don't forget us here at the National Western Center. It's just a bag of goodies from our partners, from the National Western Center. It's, I don't know, hats, and I think we even have we've got a dinosaur stuffed animal. We've just got all kinds of great stuff, CSU stuff. So, Mark, thank you, and let's give him a big hand.
I just want to say thank you for these things, and I want to tell you that I've been in History Colorado for 3.5 years, and one of the highlights has really been working on this project with you guys at the National Western Center, and I really am impressed by the dedication that everybody has here to really try to make this a part of the neighborhood and make it better. So it's not just one project for the National Western Center, but it is a neighborhood project. So thank you guys for all you do, and I really do appreciate you letting me be a part of this. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get...
I feel compelled, just a few words, that History Colorado has been very much involved in the neighborhoods, and it dates back several years now, but it's important to continue what was done collaboratively with the neighborhoods. And we need to send you to send us some cherries from Michigan when you get there.
So we have a pretty long agenda, and so I'm going to put on my former Speaker of the House hat for this evening, just so we can keep things moving along. I don't have my gavel with me because I broke like 6 when I was Speaker. But we're going to pretend like I'm Speaker of the House, and the number one rule is that in the absence of a rule, the Speaker makes the rules. So I'll be making the rules, and more importantly, we want to make sure that Mark gets out in time to celebrate his last evening in the Mile High City. So we're going to move on with partner updates from the NWC. Why not start with, Tina Martinez.
So all of our updates are in the handout. Just wanted to point out that we have a free night coming up, which is a little bit different on April 3rd. So come out and join us.
Okay, coming up, something that I really wanted to pass along to you guys that are working with the kids in the schools around here and our parents is that on April 13th we have what we call Box City of History, Colorado, and that's an event where the kids come and they actually build buildings, and then they take them and they put them in the city. They have building inspectors. You can get your building approved as a historic landmark, all these different types of things. But if you want to participate, they take sign-ups ahead of time, and they only have 350 spots, and they sell out ahead of time. So if you know somebody that wants to do it, the website is on the information that you have, so you want to go ahead and get your kids signed up to get them there. Sometimes people don't show up and you can slide a child in, but in general it's hard to get in the day of. So if it's something that you know people will want to do, if you'll get that out to them. And then also want to invite you on Sunday, April 28th, we have the Dia del Nino, and we hope you'll join us for the events for that as well. So thank you so much.
Go Rare Maggie's.
So I'll be really brief. The updates are there. 2 things I want to point out. One is we are starting up a Youth Action Coalition. We are very cognizant that there are lots of groups in the neighborhoods that focus on youth engagement or have some kind of youth engagement as part of their larger programming. So this is really targeted at National Western Center. So the idea is to get ideas from youth around what will happen here, not so much the broader neighborhoods, but still with that empowerment and skill development piece that we know is super important for youth engagement. Most important thing to say about it is a huge thank you. All of the founding National Western partners as well as the National Western Center Authority have chipped in a little bit of money to make this happen so that we can reimburse the students who are participating, and so really excited to get that up and off the ground. Other thing is that I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was a bomb cyclone, and it just happened to hit on the day that we were hosting the Water in the West Symposium. So a lot of our speakers couldn't get here. We ended up postponing it. We'll let you know what the new dates are as soon as we know them, and we'd love to see you there. That's it.
Yes, our updates for Stock Show are here. Probably the one that I want to point out is Rodeo All-Star Weekend is 2.5 weeks away, April 12th and 13th. So if you've not secured your tickets, we'd encourage you to do so at rodeoallstar.com. Friday night is Chase Bryant, immediately following the rodeo.
John for
John and
authority board, so authority board report, or you want to pass it on?
There's going to be some more detailed reporting from the board, so I will yield my time so they can give a more thorough presentation.
Liliana?
Thank you. In the interest of...
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And Liliana, you have something?
If there's anything to add after Brad goes, I'll just jump in there.
Yeah.
And speaking of Brad, Brad Buchanan with the NWC Authority update.
Couple of updates, and then we're going to do the report out, an update on the Cultivate campaign launch that started on March 20th. We posted 3 positions last week. They are all over the place. They're on the National Western Center job posting on the website, and a number of other spots. Also been posted hard copies around the neighborhood, 3 positions, so take a look at those. And one around operations, one around real estate and owner's rep role, and one around supporting programs and communications. Also, the authority is in the process of finalizing negotiations with the city and county of Denver, who is the owner of the Livestock Exchange building, to lease some space in that building that will be the new home of the National Western Center Authority. We've been squatting on some free digs downtown for a while yet, and we're about to get kicked out of there if we don't get a new home. And the plan has always been to be on the campus. And so we hope to be there in May. There is some construction work required to get the space move-in ready, and we will be in the next week or so posting an RFP on for some light construction work. So if you know folks in the community that are interested in some drywall paint, a little paint carpet, there's a little demolition, there's a little bit of drywall work, some ceiling work, very, very light electrical work. So just sort of the all-around light construction. Very interested in hiring folks from the community on this, so we'll have that posting. They do need to have, does not need to be a bonded contractor, but they do need to be insured. We do have to have general liability insurance in place to hire them. So that'll be publicly posted, and then we'll do a walkthrough with folks that are interested and make a selection. And then the main reason we're all up here is that Matt and Andrea are going to do a presentation and some of the Uncharted folks on the Cultivate launch. And I just want to just say by way of introduction that the ideas that are coming in already, and there have been a lot of them, are really inspiring. And the reason they're inspiring to me is that folks get what this project is about, and they're presenting ideas, experiences, events, programs, opportunities that are about the mission of this place. Everything from small one-person projects and ideas to larger ideas, and that's what this is about. This is about creating this platform for these experiences that you want to have, we want to have, the community wants to have, that residents of Colorado and the United States and the planet want to have, and it's very inspiring. It's getting very real. Yeah, Armando?
I just wanted to add that I had an opportunity to be part of that, and the more we participate as active members and the more we share that information with others to behave and Brad, the better we will make the National Western Conference. So I would encourage everyone and anybody to please reach out to Brad and include ideas or concepts, whatever they may be, and hopefully make this the best place in the world.
And I could not say it any better than that, so I will stop. That's perfect. Thank you, Armando. That's it. We'll make it our own. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt first, Andrea first, and talk through sort of the update of where we are in the Cultivate launch.
It was working earlier.
I know.
Now for the hand puppets portion of the program.
What's that game where you have to? What's that game where you have to draw stuff and people have to guess it? Pictionary? Yeah, we could do Pictionary CAC. It would work.
Alt F5.
What Brad said. He said Alt
It's either
F5.
Alt or Control F5. It's depends on what the screen on. Is an F5 on the screen?
I was telling it to duplicate, but it doesn't seem to be duplicating.
Maybe you should shut it off. Maybe and if all else fails, you can restart the whole computer
Yeah, I know. Here, let me just look up the button.
or throw it down the stairs.
Is there a way you guys can
It's a little known trick. Throw it down the stairs.
Okay, let us try unplugging and replugging the video cable into the computer.
everyone sign the sheet? I'll give it.
Says the wife of the AV person at the National Western.
Yay.
Get a map.
Okay.
I
So
second
just as a reminder, we spoke last month to you all about kind of the history, and we kind of walked through the lead up to the strategic implementation planning. So this is just a reminder that the Cultivate campaign and the request, the call for ideas is not the beginning. This was the beginning, and a lot of groundwork has been laid already long before we got here, and so we are just looking to take that to the next level, to take all of that planning and actually see it implemented on the campus and online. So the Cultivate campaign is running March 20th through April 20th, and our call to action, our request for people is to submit your idea. Submit your idea, your program, your event, the experience you think you can bring to the campus, or the experience you think you'd like to see on the campus. So the core of that is the form where people can input those ideas, and that exists both online and on paper. So on the National Western Center website, we have a landing page, the Cultivate page, where you can submit your idea. It has a timeline for what will happen with your idea if you submit one. FAQs, and there's a share kit, which if you haven't already, and you're a social media minded person, you can go to the share kit page, grab images and grab text, and put it on your social media accounts and share it with all your friends and family. Or if you're a professional communicator, you can send it out to your newsletters and your social accounts for your job. Here's some examples of some of the social media graphics that we have put out so far. And these are meant to align with the 9 guiding principles of the master plan. And the purpose is really to get people thinking about what they might do here at the National Western Center, what they might be able to bring to the table, how they can contribute in a way that is mission aligned with us and kind of keeps them and all of us on track, on topic, and on theme in terms of creating a holistic campus in the way that was envisioned in the master plan. In terms of direct outreach, we have contacted over 2,000 potential partners who we researched with the help of Uncharted, Thanks and his team. We also sent an email newsletter, from the National Western Center newsletter account to the 3,600 subscribers that it has. We've dropped off 4,000 flyers in English and Spanish at key locations throughout Elyria, Swansea, and Globeville. And tonight we have a drop-in information table just outside the doors, and that was advertised on the flyer, so hopefully we'll get a few folks to stop and either fill out the form or ask questions. Grace and the team can help answer any questions that anybody has from this group or any walk-ins. We were happy to get some great media coverage in the last week. The Denver Post, tonight, actually, as we speak, there's a Channel 9 story running that you'll have to check out online later. Denver Business Journal, Denverite, and we were also really pleased to get a story in the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel to reach the folks on the Western Slope. This is just a sample of some ideas so far. This was taken from a couple days ago. We have more than 60 ideas submitted so far, and they really run the gamut. But like Brad said, they've been really on topic, and it seems like we're really hearing from people who understand what the National Western Center is about. And so that's been really gratifying to see, and I think we're headed in the right direction. That's going to talk about a little bit more about the form and the process for submitting an idea.
Hi everyone, I'll stand over here. So in case you haven't had a chance to go to the website yet, just wanted to give a little bit of a drill down into what you would see in the form itself. So for those who are going to submit an idea, you start with describing who the option that best describes you. And so you could be an educator, a startup, innovator, an ag business, an individual or household, a business service, a retail business, an event producer, a funder, investor, a nonprofit, a government agency, or other. And so the goal here is to be incredibly inclusive in terms of who has access to be someone that submits an idea in terms of what they want to do at the National Western Center. In terms of the things that you could do at the National Western, you could bring an event, you could offer educational content, sell products or foods on the campus, provide a service to the campus, lease an office space, invest in a program, experience the National Western Center as a visitor, or suggest another kind of idea. And then kind of deeper into the form, we ask whether this idea could happen today or whether we need the actual physical campus. So we're asking people, yes, my idea can happen in a historic or new building during construction. My idea can happen online during construction, or my idea should launch in 2024 in a new building or outdoor space. And then the last kind of question, the rest of this are kind of key demographic and location information, but we also wanted to know, is the idea ready to go? Are you already operating and this is what you do, or do you have an idea that needs support? And we want to make sure that we're able to support everything from brand new ideas where someone's been inspired to kind of fill out a form. How do we find the resources to work with them to grow that idea at the National Western Center to someone who's got something ready to go tomorrow? So I wanted to kind of talk about a couple ways that we're using this information. And just to remind you, this is part of the overall strategic implementation process. So the way that these ideas are going to be used, they're used in multiple ways. One is to make sure that we have good content for the upcoming summit, which we'll be talking about in a second, which is where we'll be developing our long-term strategy and roadmap for programming the campus. We'll also be finding opportunities for potential partners in the short term and the medium future. So it's kind of a both and. We're looking for people that we can start building those relationships and partnerships with now, but we're also hoping to have all the content that we need to inform a great summit and a work group process. And then when possible, we're going to be connecting and matchmaking ideas to opportunities and resources in real time to help make them happen.
When do you want questions, at the end?
Yeah.
Let's do it at the end.
Yeah. So how are ideas being synthesized? One is, like I said a second ago, we'll be working to identify a subset ideas for early follow-up. But we'll also be thinking about what type of criteria we'll use to categorize those ideas for the summit. How do they align with the master plan, vision, and guiding principles? Is there financial feasibility for the ideas that would need resources? Is there revenue potential to ensure the campus is strong and sustainable over time? And then we'll also be asking the board, CAC members, and other individuals to provide specific feedback on the ideas that are aligned to their areas of expertise. I think it's also important, we said it in the last meeting, but it's important to note that this is an open period from March 20 to April 20, but this is an ongoing process and a platform that we envision having, in the long-term future. So while this is a window to collect ideas to inform the summit and our work plan process, this is going to be an open opportunity for anyone who has an idea, and we'll be using this to share with communities and potential partners over the long term. And then how ideas can find support. We recognize that all these ideas aren't going to be ready to go tomorrow. And so part of the work plan process that we're developing is to create a strategy for capacity building and technical assistance to help people develop their ideas. That could come in the form of connecting people to academic researchers, to incubating ideas, to having accelerators where people can have support from consulting partners and mentors to help grow their ideas. And so we recognize that there's going to be a need for capacity building and technical assistance. We also really want to have a full pipeline of locally sourced opportunities that we can help grow at the National Western Center. So both resources for capacity building and technical assistance, broadly speaking, but also recognizing that we want to find dedicated resources to make sure that we have the local pipeline. So the way that we're proposing to engage you all in this process, we talked a little bit about this last time. So here we are at the Cultivate campaign. As I think Armando was saying, as we've all been asking, is we would love your support being outreach champions, especially finding the harder to reach residents, entrepreneurs, creatives, small businesses that we want to see submit ideas. We'd also love to see your ideas. So if you have an idea to submit, make sure that you're doing that yourself. At the summit, you are all invited as the active participants in the summit. We're still working on the date. It's actually not surprising to you all, I'm sure, hard to find a date that we can settle on. We're also looking for people that want to help plan the process, and I'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. But for those who want to raise their hand, they can be involved in designing the summit process itself. Then we move into the work group process, and we'll be looking for all of you to be participants in one or more work group, bringing your content and context expertise to ensuring the community's voices are heard, and then we're developing the right strategies at the work group level. And then at the implementation plan, we'll be bringing the plan to you for feedback. Our hope is that there'll be continued engagement in various forms to support implementation. So I think there's a hopefully a clear engagement path for everyone kind of throughout the entire process. Similar in all the Elyria, Swansea, and Globeville communities. We'd love to see the ideas. We're always looking for outlets to raise awareness of the Cultivate campaign. The summit itself will be an open meeting, so there's opportunities for individuals to come and engage and learn about the National Western Center, what we learned through the Cultivate campaign, start getting tied into the work group opportunities, where we'll be looking for residents to be participants in the work groups as well, for those who submitted ideas or those who wish to commit their time and contribute to the work plan process, and then similarly continued engagement in various forms to support implementation. And with that, I will invite Grace, who will talk a little from Uncharted, who will talk a little bit about the work we've been doing specifically in the surrounding neighborhoods, and then some exercise to hopefully get you guys thinking about who else we should be talking to.
Hello everyone, my name is Grace. I'd like to introduce myself because this is my first time being here. I'm working with Uncharted, and I'm very excited to be working with the National Western Center in this process. I want to share a personal idea, a personal goal of what I see the National Western Center doing. I'm hoping that these local ideas, I can take these local ideas in maybe 1 year, even 5 years, and take them to my village and bring water there. And so this is the type of conversation that I'm hoping that we can start. I love to sit and listen to those ideas and see how these locally sourced ideas can transform into a world experience and something that I can take home and tell my grandfather, here's a better way to dig the well, a freshwater well and not a saltwater well. And going from that story, I've been really inspired at the level of community assets that are already existing. And I've been in conversations with a lot of you and would love to be in more conversations with you through Uncharted in the National Western Center to talk about this process. We have been going through a process where we have been, at one level, trying to find all the contacts and the emails within the GS neighborhood that we can reach out to. This has been a combination of churches, individuals, Eaton Metal Products. I don't know if they saw our email, but we certainly sent it to them. So we're doing our best to see how can we reach folks in the GS neighborhood. So looking at it from an email outreach perspective, we've done that. We definitely would love your support in getting more of our content to the neighborhoods as it is on an email perspective. In terms of what we've been able to achieve on our outreach locations, we have been able to have conversations and drop flyers at all these 24 locations. This has been a combination of some of you opening the doors for us to have these conversations. It's been a lot of you walking with us through these settings and helping us start up these conversations. It's been a lot of you saying, go here, why haven't you talked here? And we thank you, I thank you for helping us get here. And as we move till April 20th, we have 3 weeks left. We still want to have a deeper engagement with community members. We want to have a deeper engagement with folks who are not necessarily seeing these drop-off locations, who are busy working their hours, taking care of their families, but have ideas and have great concepts of programs, businesses that they want to be a part of the National Western Center from the beginning. We need to help to pass this second layer of outreach. We want to pass the second layer of engagement. We want to be available to have one-on-one meetings. Not just that, we want to talk about community spaces that we can create together. There's a lot of things that the CAC is doing, and we want to enhance that. How can we have conversations at the next stage of the National Western Center programming with you, and how can we work together to help the rest of the community members on board on this conversation as well. I have a great example is today after our board meeting, I had an opportunity to walk down Washington Street. and I passed by the Holy Rosary Church and I met some great folks and I dropped off some flyers. And they said that they would love to put it on Sunday, so when the congregants come in there, they can grab the flyers as they walk in or as they walk out. I met with Reverend David Thatcher, who is the main reverend at the Holy Transfiguration Church, etc., etc. I can't quite catch it, but we had a great conversation on how he thinks about what the National Western Center is doing. He's been here for 3 years, doesn't really know what is happening, but he has, please don't say that, but he has access to a great community of congregants who've had that experience, and it's our goal to make sure that we're reaching folks where they are, and we're having relevant conversations on how the National Western Center is going to be a resource for the community going forward. And so there's certain areas between now and April 20th that we really need your help with. And it's one, where else can we, who else should we be talking to for ideas? We have ideas, we need more. We love more ideas. The more diverse, the better. The second part of this question is a sheet that's going around. We'd love to get your feedback. Is there a name that you want us, is there a name and a number that you want us to call? Is there a phone number, an email that you want us to add to our list? Is there a place that we need to be visiting? Is there someone we need to do our first outreach with? Help us do this work. The second part of this talks about what else can we be doing to spread the word. 24 is by no means exhaustive. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be continuing to do this work, and we're continually looking to connect with you to think about how can we be creative in our approach. So please take a few minutes and look at the prompt that has been put in front of you. I'd love to get some ideas if there's anyone who has some off-the-cuff places that we can start writing down right now. But if not, please, would love to collect your forms at the end of the day, because what we'll do with that, we will use that to inform what we are doing tomorrow, what we're outreaching tomorrow.
Is there an email address we can send this to?
Absolutely. So an email address, which is also on the form, is cultivate@nationalwesterncenter.com. cultivate@nationalwesterncenter.com.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I will also go forward as saying, if it's easier for folks, there's a lot of forms that are available, both in English and Spanish. If you talk with folks and they're saying, I love this idea, I want to mail it, but maybe not, how can I get this to the National Western Center? Take a picture. Once you fill out the form, take a picture of that form, email it to cultivate@nationalwesterncenter.com. We will read it, we will transcribe it, and we will add it to our list of ideas.
Questions?
Go back to the list that you had, just so we can see where.
Yeah. So I don't know if if folks at the back can see what we, some of our outreach list. So we've been Valdez Perry, Focus Points, Grow House, Community Wealth Building, GS Coalition, all the way down to Global Community Church, Project Angel Heart, Globeville Center, Stapleton Rec Center. Did you know that there was a circus center around us? So we dropped the flyers in. We say, you're in the Globeville area, maybe you can bring your circus to town. But we dropped the flyers there. This is a business that's in the area. The Greater Harvest Church of God, Taqueria Sanchez, Pastor got some great tacos and dropped off some flyers about the National Western Center. And then these are some of the places that we just recently went to, and we want to continually add places to the list, want to continually add people to talk to.
And just to wrap, as I probably sound like a broken record, but oops. We would love your help spreading the word. Brad uses the term, in order to kind of supercharge the strategic implementation planning process, it really requires these ideas. This is the kind of fuel for the engine, and the more ideas we can get from the surrounding communities, the more that fuel can feed the strategic implementation planning process. And as I said earlier, for those who want to participate in planning meetings for the May Summit, my email and phone number are below, and just shoot me an email or shoot me a text or call me, and we'll get you scheduled for some meetings to help us think through that. And now, questions?
I didn't see the Denver Public Schools on the outreach list, and I think there is some activity there. I'm not sure, but I wanted to especially check because there's also related after-school programs and things like that. So how firm is that? Because I don't know how far to go to give you that information, and there's lots of people here that, or there's a significant people that have kids in the schools and stuff like that.
Well, on one level, we have done initial email outreach with all the principals that are in the area. A second layer of outreach we are doing is actually dropping off the flyers. As you know, it's a spring break, and so most of the schools are closed. So I walked by Garden Place Elementary, and it was completely empty. And so this next week is really the opportunity for us to drop these flyers physically and do canvassing work, which is sort of introducing ourselves. We are also pursuing collaborations. For example, CSU has a connection with, works with Swansea Elementary and Bruce Randolph. So in conversations, I'm thinking through how do we enhance that particular relationship? How can we even start thinking about doing presentations in schools? So I will say that we are continually trying to find ways that we can be in front of the schools and looking to have conversations with folks in the room around how we can work together to do that. It's not a complete response, but I'm hoping it's an initial response to what we are working on.
So to help with that, Liz, you know that
yes.
thing I put together?
Yeah.
Can you get that to?
I will.
There's an interactive page with the contacts at numerous variety of things as to when to get flyers to, especially the local schools, in order for them to get out to the population. Although I don't know if you know this, Armando, I think Garden Place has gone electronic instead of handing out the packet each week. Is that correct?
I just want to say something real quick about Garden Place.
Well, okay.
Rusty Collins from Colorado State University, in conjunction with Johnson, have been reaching out to Garden Place, and they are going to meet with the principal, I believe, this Friday, or Rusty is, to give a vision of an urban 4-H club. So that's the legwork, the foundation. Those discussions have been taking place. So actually, to cultivate some of these ideas moving forward in the thinking in that process. And then as we move forward, we want to open up the urban 4-H club to all the GES. So yes, we're going down that path.
And do they have electronic distribution for the whole student bodies?
Well, we haven't discussed that. That discussion has not taken place yet. But right now we're at the conceptual phase, working in concert with Jocelyn.
If you guys shoot me an email, I can send you the document that AE did. It has all the great contacts.
So I appreciate the plug for that progress. What I'm talking about is the standard weekly announcement to the whole student body. No big deal, we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. But the other thing I wanted to do is to back up a little bit, and I don't know which slide it is, regarding that you want to link up in real time projects with resources, etc. So this becomes my benevolent concern about that kind of thinking in this process, because you're making a selection process, and I get that there's certain ways that there can be some obvious alignments with what is the broad scope of the National Western Center, but I also feel like we shouldn't underestimate the momentum that can come from activating things once there's a more solid cohesiveness about the interrelatedness of things. So I'm concerned because a lot of how these judgments are made, how things are leveraged, I'm concerned that we don't end up with a bunch of individual types of decisions that are more subjective than they need to be. So I don't know how to put this, but I feel like there's a patchwork quilt element to this that I'm afraid isn't quite the synergy that would be the most powerful with this. And each person has their own thing and all that, but it's been a conversation that goes on among us all over the place. So I just want you to respond to that a little bit.
All the ideas are going to be shared with everyone. So while we're looking for some themes, in terms of some of these work groups, all of the ideas are going to be shared with everyone, so you'll be able to see those, so that some of those sort of just organic partnerships can show up, as well as maybe presenting ideas for partnerships that some of you might not have thought of as well.
Well, I think a good example, so if someone said, my idea is to do an urban 4-H club, and we know that someone at Garden Place is looking for an opportunity to have a related program, we would try to connect that. I think that's what we're talking about in terms of matchmaking. Did Brad plus me answer your question, or is there another?
It's an ongoing discussion. I think it's important to continue.
Yeah.
Anybody else has any questions?
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We're going to move on to Emily. Where's Emily? Was she really next?
No, you're skipping me.
Oh, sorry, Brad. Sorry, Emily, you're not. No. Yeah, I messed it all up here.
There are two Brads here, Terrence.
Brad Dotson.
So good evening, everyone. It is spring break week, and so a number of members of our team are taking advantage of the holiday and spending time with their family. That includes Gretchen, who is out of town with her family, as Barb Frommel, who is overseeing our campus-wide services work. So I'm going to do an update on construction and procurement and campus-wide services in one shebang, and I'm going to stay seated if that's okay. After I go through this, Emily Hopper and Patrick O'Keefe are going to talk through the triangle, and then Jay Rinkins is going to walk through the design handbook that is in front of you. First things first, I want to, this is hot off the presses, was just scheduled, I believe, today. April 24th is a big day. April 24th at 11 a.m. we are doing a groundbreaking ceremony, and this is for all the horizontal work that will be coming forward. That also includes a Native American blessing to be part of that. So please mark your calendars for April 24th at 11 o'clock. And I believe Jenna Espinoza is our Director of Communications. We'll be sending out a save the date through our various channels soon. All right, we show this slide every week. You guys know what we are building, but we are actively in construction. On the work underway, we highlight these integrated construction contracts because those really are contracts of opportunity, and there's continued work that will be coming out of the integrated demolition contract and the horizontal integrated contract. While we have this slide up, I also want to give you a construction update on Brighton. You may have noticed there's a partial closure of Brighton Boulevard at 48th Avenue. There's a new sanitary sewer pipe that's going in. You can drive north, but if you were driving south on Brighton, there is a detour that takes you over to Race Court over to National Western Center Drive. That work will continue for about 4 months. So kind of into the summer, by mid-late summer, that work will wrap up. And Brighton will be done. So we're excited to have that wrapping up. We have a lot of work underway on our vertical design and construction. You see Populous listed there for design of the equestrian center and parking garage. That contract is going through the city council process right now.
Last week.
It was approved I think committee last week, and then I think Liz is fact-checking me here live, so we're wrapping up that process. The next slide is the future procurements of our two largest buildings. The Equestrian Center CMGC RFQs were submitted last week. They're currently under review by the selection committee. We anticipate announcing a short list and an RFP as early as next week. On the next slide, I want to spend a little bit of time here on campus-wide services. We have been doing a lot of work, our team in the Mayor's Office at the National Western Center, working with the Phase 1 and 2 capital build team, as well as with Emily and Patrick on the Triangle team, about how these different services really spread across the entire campus and how the campus can operate as a whole and function even better through a campus-wide holistic approach to these services. And I want to talk briefly through each of these. Energy and water, you guys may remember we have EAS Energy Services on board to help us think through what are the energy possibilities of the campus, and this is looking at the Delgany Interceptor and whether we can pull heat off of that to provide thermal energy for the buildings. They're in a pre-development phase. They have some deliverables that are due in April, so we'll have more about this next month, but that work continues. We're also really excited about some of the work with our partners, with Excel, with Metro, with Denver Water. I want to talk about Excel for a second. Excel really is an innovative company. They continue to innovate and continue to work with us at the National Western Center about bringing some new ideas to the table about how they can provide energy solutions that both complement the work that EAS is doing, but also would stand alone on themselves. So we're really excited about some of the ideas that they're bringing to the table when we continue to work through those, and we anticipate having more about that next month as well. On concessions, food, beverage across the campus, we continue to do due diligence there, working closely with both Phase 1 and 2 and with the Triangle team to look at what are the different strategies that can be employed to bring food service to the campus. Information technology and security. We've done some basic design of a trunk fiber infrastructure loop and looking at a future procurement and how the different elements that could be pulled into that, how different services could be bundled. We're also working on outdoor media advertising, and this is work that is being done in conjunction with the city's community planning and development office. As they are thinking about the rezoning of the campus, what are the opportunities for outdoor media, and what's the appropriate way that could work on the campus? And then finally, on solid waste, we're in the middle of a solid waste master plan, and looking at the different streams of waste that will come through, both for trash, for recycling, for composting. Anticipating what are the demands for that? What is the way that we can think about this holistically in the campus? What can we do how can the design of the campus and the design of the buildings reduce operational impacts for the authority, and how we can be thoughtful about that? And we have this unique opportunity with a brand new campus to really think through all of these things and what's the best way for the campus to operate as a whole. So we will we continue to gear up for these future procurements where we add staff, we add subject matter experts, and so you'll see us coming each month talking more about these and bringing some of our team members here to talk more about some of the thinking and the innovation that our team is bringing to this, and then to incorporate your ideas about how the campus can operate most efficiently. And looking into the future. So that is all I have, and I think I'm going to hand it over now to Emily and to Patrick. I believe this is Emily's first time here with the CAC. Emily Hopper, she introduced herself earlier, but is the Executive Director of the Performance-Based Infrastructure Office. So you've heard us talk about the triangle. Sometimes you may have heard the term P3. You may have heard the term PBI. We think about within the city and county of Denver, we call this performance-based infrastructure. And so Emily has spent many years in the mayor's office, and recently last year took over as executive director of the PBI office. Patrick O'Keefe, who is the program manager for the mayor's office at the National Western Center, you guys all know Patrick, is also staffing Emily on this work. So Emily, Patrick, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you all, and good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to present to you all. I hope that this is the first of an ongoing series of updates to this group. And I will apologize in advance. I am battling a sinus infection, so the elevated volume of sniffles through the microphone, my apologies. But wanted to take the opportunity to give this group an update on where we are with the development of the Triangle Project, what my role is, how we talk about the National Western Center office and the authority of this group going forward as we think about completing the campus through the delivery of the Triangle Project. Most of this information was presented at a community meeting at Johnson Rec Center at the end of February, so apologies to those of you who've already heard a bit of this information already, but hopefully it'll start sinking in. Some of the information is fairly dense, so I'm happy to take questions in real time if it is pertaining to something I'm presenting, but it would be great if we could hold kind of general questions till the end. And I have Jenna somewhere scribing questions, so if we aren't able to address them today, we can work to get you all answers hopefully before the next meeting. So here's what we're going to go over today. I want to give you all an update on what the Triangle Project is. Probably for this group, you are most familiar with this as the future phases of the National Western Center campus. That's phases 3 through 8. We have brought all of that under one umbrella and we have branded it the Triangle. And you'll see why here in a sec. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of how the city is anticipating delivering this project through the performance-based infrastructure approach, and then additional opportunities for community engagement going forward. So this is really the what and how we've gotten here, and I will toss it off to what we refer to as our sponsoring agency in the PBI program, and that is the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
So I'm here as a force substitute for Gretchen today. So everyone's pretty familiar with this time frame. Most of you have lived it. Kind of the traveling through time, the forming of the CAC, the master plan, the mayor's office forming, the authority board, and then obviously phase 1 and 2. These are this for what Emily's talking about today with the future phases or triangle. All these things are important because they feed into the triangle. The authority board is the owner of the facilities the authority is the owner of the facilities when we're done, has rights and responsibilities in the framework agreement that we need to consider as part of the triangle. The phase 1 and 2 construction dictates when facilities are available. When the new event center or the equestrian center is built, the old event center becomes redundant. And so not knowing those sequences, we couldn't go forward with the future phases. And we also have done some important work with this group and other community groups in setting precedent and expectations that will be carried forward in the triangle on everything from workforce to community interaction and how the campus works together. These are Gretchen's slides. I got to look at them real quick. Just again, the framework agreement, which is the overriding contract. That is a contract in fact. It's been passed by the City Council. It's been passed by the CSU Board of Governors and the WSSA Executive Board or Executive Committee. This provides rights and responsibilities. It also provides remedies if the 10,000 seat arena and expo hall are not provided within a reasonable time frame, which is quite a long time. They're important to the stock show, and there are remedies for the stock show to try to bring those in. And so, it also sets up the rules of the road on what rights the authority board has, what rights the stock show has, what rights the city has in that agreement. They could be amended in the development agreement, but they'll be considered to get all together with the Triangle developers. So Brad talked about campus-wide services. If there was I'll just pick an easy one, if the waste contract made sense to do as a campus-wide service, that's something the authority is doing right now, but if it was cheaper or there was a better recycling component or something, the parties may choose to assign that to the developer. So the framework agreement was, again, an important precedent on this. And then the final piece is you all, again, have lived this. We remind people that we've evolved from the master plan, which had all the components, but rail down the middle. This worked from a functionality standpoint, but from a optimized stock or site plan, we still had this great big short line rail corridor splitting the site down the middle. Open riverfront, the facilities are kind of stacked on this side, but the rail consolidation was a real issue. The baseline, which was short-lived, this is a couple months. For those of you, I wouldn't forgive you if you even forgot this. This is when we pushed rail to the outside. So this got rail out of the middle of the site, which is great from an operational standpoint and a spectator standpoint, but it put rail between the site and the river. and that was, a challenge. And so now this is what we're building, which is everyone's familiar with this. This is the site plan, which is, got the rail, centralized rail corridor. And this is what the triangle developers looking at this side are now using, and they know when the facilities come offline over here, when 1909 is available for restoration, and when the development can go forward. So we'll turn it back to Emily.
Thank you. And now you will see why we have branded it the triangle, because the future phases are shaped like a triangle. So
we're smart that way.
we won't forget it. So because this is the first time I've had the opportunity to come present to you all, I wanted to just give you a little bit of an overview of what the Office of Performance-Based Infrastructure is, what my role is with this project. So this is not specific to the triangle, it actually looks at all the projects across the city. So the purpose of the PBI office is, let me back up. About 3 years ago, the mayor had the foresight to say, look, the federal government's backing away from their responsibilities to invest in new infrastructure assets and improving our existing facilities that are deteriorating, day by day. So how is the city going to look at different ways to ensure that we are maintaining high quality infrastructure projects and providing good services to our residents? So we put together, looked at best practice, had stakeholder engagement to put together a program that systematically and transparently evaluates projects to ensure that it's meeting the needs of the particular communities that are going to be utilizing these projects, as well as to make sure that any project considers our values of inclusion and equity and opportunities for all. So as part of the program, the performance-based infrastructure was established, and essentially I'm a coordinating, convening entity that takes what the sponsoring agency brings forward. They're the what, and the PBI office is the how we're going to deliver it. So when we talk about performance-based infrastructure, we are really thinking about delivering a project in totality. So we would be looking at the private sector to design, construct, and potentially operate and maintain public assets. This is not selling off public assets. This is just a way to leverage private financing as well as private sector expertise that the city may not have. It just really opens up more tools for the city to be able to meet our new and improving our existing facilities. But it is important, and I want to take a minute because I'll reference back to this slide a little bit. This is a different way of delivering projects for the city. So that's why we have this evaluation process. That's why we have an office. That's why we have a whole stakeholder engagement component to this to ensure that we are making the right decision on delivery method for a particular project. Every project is vastly different. So some of the opportunities when we think about the PBI approach is it does help to manage challenges of large projects. The PBI office really is only evaluating projects upwards of $30 million, but likely in the 100+ million. So these projects are few and far between on the city side, but it does help manage some of those by having a single private sector counterparty. Yes?
You said it's okay to interrupt.
Yeah.
The challenges I don't think list here, and this is often a criticism of P3s. It's not these PBI is basically
Yes.
It's equivalent term. So one problem I think many people have is the transparency, because when it's a public project, there's certain rules like Open Records Act. We can all look at it because it's a public. We own it as the public. But when it's a private firm, they can claim, well, these are trade secrets. We can't tell you what we're doing here. So I think in your challenges, it's kind of an incomplete list, really. There is the issue of transparency, and often in the contracting itself, that's not it's kind of an opaque process. So those are just concerns that people have with P3s.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we've tried to address that as best as possible, taking really lessons learned across the state and across the country, and how to do it better and how to make it really how to customize it to our needs. So as far as the PBI program goes, we have, again, a stakeholder engagement component that includes guidelines, that includes a transparency memo as part of the establishment of the performance-based infrastructure office. So you can see what kind of information will be available when and where you can find that. So we are trying to be as transparent, but definitely are very cognizant of the differential when it comes to a traditional delivery versus a
Emily, there's kind of one other issue too, I think that's a challenge or an issue with P3s, and that is that we don't really own it as a public. You know, I think that it's usually a private firm. I mean, I hate to invoke the issue of I-70, but I-70 is not really going to be a state asset anymore. It's going to be owned by Kiewit Meridian. They're going to operate it and maintain it. So if there's certain, say, the expo hall will not be a public asset, right?
No, yes, it will. Yep, all of the public elements that I'm going to talk about this evening will always remain under the ownership of the city. Yes, we are not selling our assets, the public elements here.
Okay, because some of the concern is that these are not really public assets anymore. You know, that they've been sold over to, they've been privatized. So it's just a concern with P3s.
Yep, for the City of Denver's program, we are, there's no contemplation of privatization in any of our projects. This is really about leveraging private sector.
One thing, Drew, just to note, so that the 1909 arena public market in the RFQ, the developer is merely improving the property and restoring it. And then it will be operated by a nonprofit. So that is the one exclusion in there where it is pulled out. It is not operated by the private developer in any way, shape, or form. They have to provide accommodation for access, and it is integrated with the campus, which is great. But the ownership is not held by the private developer in 1909.
And Drew, typically in P3s that I've worked on a lot in my legal career, the property is still owned by the public entity. What the private entity does, it gets the right to operate the conveyance of some sort or whatever the project is. For instance, if you look at the 470 project, that's all still publicly owned property, but the E470 authority has the right to operate it because they put the money in to build the highway, and so now they operate it, and through tolls they recoup the cost of actually fronting the money to build 470. But the property is actually owned by the state, and when 470, technically, when 470, the authority recoups their cash, the property reverts back to the state. So that's the general mode, but there are other ways to structure a P3, but at the end of the day, almost every structure, the governmental entity retains control of the actual asset, because it is it's leverage for the government in a lot of ways.
That's right, and thus all of our city's social ordinances will apply because it is a public asset.
Slash talking later.
Let's see what else. So when we think about incorporating the design and construction and potentially long-term operation and maintenance, what do you want? Yes. When we think about a PBI approach and incorporating the design and construction and potentially the long-term operations and maintenance of a public facility, we are able to look at the project over the life cycle. So we build in not just the upfront cost to build the asset, but actually ensuring that we have money to cover the long-term maintenance so that we have high-quality, high-performing assets. Again, on the challenges, I think, we talked about the long and complex contracts. Some issues around transparency. There's higher transaction costs because we are looking at incorporating the design and construction and the operations and maintenance. It's not just design and then construction, so it's all bundled together. This is not the right approach for all projects, and that's why we have a program and an office and a mechanism for doing that neutral evaluation. And one of the key pieces that we have to weigh when we look at the PBI approach is recognizing that using private finance is more expensive than using tax-exempt public finance options. And so when we look at the benefits, both quantitative and qualitative benefits of a PBI approach, we have to weigh that against the higher cost of capital. So I mentioned a little bit about the program, but really it's the values of the program is around certainty and transparency in the evaluation of projects for this delivery method. We want to make sure that this is an opportunity for job creation by delivering these large capital programs and workforce development opportunities. And the way the program has been structured is in 5 phases, and all of this is available online on the PBI office website. So if you have a hard time falling asleep, feel free to check that out. But when we look at it, really planning, a project gets planned by the sponsoring agency. They're looking at the what needs to get delivered for our residents. I come in and start working with them during the screening process. That's to determine if a project is actually potentially viable for this delivery method. If so, we begin to do some structuring. That's really where we have been collectively on the Triangle project. And if it seems to, again, make sense to move forward through the alternative delivery, we would move to procurement and see if there's actually a market for delivering a particular project by the private sector. So now to the fun and exciting pieces, the Triangle project. So you all are familiar with, of course, phases 1 and 2, but when we talk about the Triangle project, it's about 60 acres. So it's left over to, in order for the campus to be completed and for us to have the neighborhood connectivity and the additional neighborhood amenities. So we have 4 required public elements: the redevelopment of the 1909 historic building into a public market. We have the construction of a new approximately 10,000 seat arena. We have a new exposition hall, as well as supporting parking for those facilities. We are contemplating the public elements taking up about 18 of the 60 acres of the Triangle site, leaving about 42 acres available for private co-development opportunities, and I'll talk a little bit about what those might be. So when we think about going to the market, we want to make sure that the market understands what the delivery of this project, the goals that we are hoping for them to achieve. So of course, any proposal that comes forward has to advance the vision and mission of the National Western Center, all of the master plan and all of the supporting documentation, the framework agreement, all of that has been shared with industry. We want to make sure that the delivery of the Triangle project activates the campus, it completes the campus, and provides those amenities that serve the local neighborhoods as well as the broader Denver region, as the master plan and other planning and visioning documents have outlined. We want to make sure that we're integrating the work that's being done on phases 1 and 2 with the Triangle, as well as with the surrounding neighborhoods, ensuring that we're managing phasing and ongoing operations, opportunities, and risks. We also want to make sure that we're minimizing the financial obligation on the city. This is a large project, so we're looking at alternative ways to minimize those obligations. We want to make sure that we've got world-class operations and venue management practices being incorporated, and then partnership. Always partnership is top of mind. That's partnership with the community, that's partnership with the partners on the campus, and other stakeholders. So we want to make sure that the PBI industry understands that in order to deliver the project, they will need to meet these goals.
This is relevant to this slide, but if you want to answer it later. In conversation with, how far in advance can you book something? Can it be booked even before it's built? And can you get revenue? Because people operate things years out. And then secondly, can you sell sponsorships and things of that sort does that fall in this department? And can you collaborate with the economic models here to start to have conversation with revenue sharing into the community benefits conversations and things like that in the initial negotiations with partnerships?
Do you want to have Paul? I was going to say, I'm happy to take part of that, but some of that belongs with our partner.
Do you want to answer part of it?
AE, that actually gets, well, very complicated.
I know it does. That's why I said you could answer it later, but thank you. I'm glad you're here.
The National Western Stock Show has sponsorship rights to phases 1 and 2 in the development. So we will be out marketing and selling all the sponsorships across those buildings and paying the authority a commission. And that's in the framework agreement. The sponsorships in the Triangle, which Emily is talking about, are yet to be defined based on the business model that actually comes out of the Triangle. So the developer will have to negotiate both with the authority and the stock show in some respects on sponsorships. And when I'm talking about sponsorships, I'm not talking about somebody putting up a retail establishment within that 60 acres. I'm talking about the Pepsis of the world that are going to do a pouring rights deal, or the Coca-Colas, or the, those sort of things, the CenturyLinks and so forth. So So anyway, those are down the road to address, and they'll be addressed collectively between National Western, really CSU at some levels also, across campus services and the authority. So it's complicated.
I love questions that reveal things that are way over my head.
Emily, what did I miss there? Anything that you want to add?
The only other piece would be around community amenities, and so we would we will require the developer to participate in I know there's a broader community amenities conversation. We would expect the developer to participate in that as well, and we would require them to. Okay, so I'll breeze through this, but we have some key entities when we talk about delivering the project. They have various roles and responsibilities. We have the city, which is the contract counterparty with the private entity. They are the principal and facility owner of the campus. We have the PBI office. My office is leading the procurement for the project. It's the how we're going to get it delivered. And I am working most closely with council and the development partner, but of course with the community, with this group and a broader group of stakeholders. We have the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center, our sponsoring agency, and again, they're the what. They develop content that gets fed into the PBI office for evaluation and structuring. They are responsible for delivering phases 1 and 2, which you all have heard enough of this evening, I'm sure. And then we have our authority that has a 100-year lease for use of campus. And they are a key party when we think about the rights and responsibilities outlined in the framework agreement and what we may or may not be asking a private developer to deliver on the triangle. Just a reminder of what we're asking a private developer to deliver. So we had to make some project cost assumptions of the public elements, and it's important for you all to take a look at this and familiarize yourself. It's big. This is a large, complex project. And some of the key takeaways, I mean, it's about $500 million, but we get some real public benefits here. We have our 1909 restoration. We also have the opportunity to do environmental remediation on the Coliseum parking lot site. Without the delivery of the triangle, we're not able to clean that up and close out that Superfund site. So this is a really exciting opportunity. We had to make some additional assumptions on the private co-development as well. So again, we're looking at approximately 42 acres. And one of the benefits of using the PBI approach is that we tell the private developer what we need built as far as the public elements, and they place them where best to maximize operational and maintenance efficiencies. So we may see the public elements here, we may see them elsewhere, but it's really to capture the most value that we can from the available land. So what we're looking at when we think about what the private co-development opportunities would be, it could be retail, it could be hospitality, entertainment, educational, R&D. I mean, it's pretty broad right now, but we want to make sure that whatever we evaluate does meet those goals that we talked about earlier. So advancing the vision and mission of the National Western Center, ensuring that we've got community connectivity, and we're activating and working and providing amenities to the surrounding community, as well as those others. So we are looking at how we're going to pay for this. Most importantly, I'm not the Department of Finance, so this is a little bit out of my swim lane, but it is important. So basically what we are contemplating is that we would leverage the value of the private development opportunities, about 42 acres, to offset the city's financial obligation for delivering the public elements. We're looking at different sources, including working with Dura to establish an urban renewal area on the Triangle project, as well as using the Metropolitan District tool to leverage or to collect a mill levy on the developer to go towards maintenance. So what my office does, and this is a little bit out of order, but I think it is important, we again look at how we're going to deliver our project. We do this through a business case analysis. It compares the traditional delivery if the city were to just deliver the public elements on our own and the private development on our own, and we would be trying to place those with the PBI approach, which is the more comprehensive approach. We look at the qualitative and quantitative criteria and evaluate whether one method or the other makes the most sense for a particular project. For the triangle project, this is really the why. Why are we delivering it this way? We think that there's a real benefit in having a single counterparty to coordinate the planning of the public and the private elements. Again, we've given them kind of a blank slate. We've asked them to deliver the 4 required public elements, but the rest of it is for them to best determine what the right approach is to maximize revenues and efficiencies. It does transfer the risk of this large and complex project. We've got phasing challenges with phases 1 and 2 when different facilities come offline and we're able to tear down others in the triangle site. Again, integration and site planning, we have the whole vision piece, so we're doing it comprehensively. And we are able to transfer the long-term performance of these elements to the private sector, and we think that there really is, this provides the opportunity for greater success in delivering the project in totality. This is pulled directly from the business case, so you can take a look at it, but it's really just the likelihood of each of these elements happening under the traditional versus the PBI approach. The takeaway here, one of the, I think, critiques really of the PBI approach is that it somehow gets around community or other public benefits, and with Denver's PBI program and the evaluation that we've done with this project, they are delivered of at least the same standard in both delivery methods. So this is not a way to get around our social ordinances. This is not a way to miss the opportunity for workforce development. This is really a way to ensure that those public elements are, the public values are incorporated. And you can see a copy of the business case, again, if you have a hard time falling asleep. It is available on the PBI office website. I don't know, Liz, if you send this out, if folks have...
I did send that out.
Okay.
No, I didn't send that out, no.
Okay.
I sent out the RFQ.
If you're interested, that's where you can find it. It's about 20 pages. So last, but I have 2 slides. It's really about schedule and next steps. So what we've been doing and where we're going, we've done city council and community outreach over the last 2 months, and that will be ongoing. We did have our Triangle Opportunity Day. That was our PBI industry forum where we introduced industry to what this project is. We provided NWBE reverse networking session, so the big guys can start to meet the little guys as they form those teams, because that public value will be really important when we evaluate potential bidders. We did release the RFQ, which I believe you all have at least have a copy of. We are looking to do pre-statement of qualification meetings. Actually, those are coming up. We're going to continue to do council and community meetings in the spring once we have a better idea of what bidders are proposing. And then if we get proposals and qualified teams, we will put out an RFP. Later in the fall, you see the rest of the sequence of the project development work with the bidding teams. And this does assume ongoing community and council and broader stakeholder engagement points. I think the only other piece here is really when we think about the queue, it was to just go to market. It's really broad, as you have seen in the document, to say, is there a market for delivering this project by the PBI industry? And if the answer is yes, then this is where we get a little bit more of the detailed content, but some of that actually does happen as we move forward and hopefully get a preferred bidder. Yeah.
So Emily, are you looking for one entity to do the whole triangle?
We would have one preferred team that would do the design, construction, and long-term O&M, but they would have multiple entities on their team.
Okay, so just like as far as the land area, would you divide that up? They could, in their proposal, divide it up, right, into areas. Maybe that depends on how they do it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we talked a little bit about the top, but really just the bottom. We are taking as much of the content that has been developed thus far and providing it to to industry as part of the procurement process. This is the first of hopefully ongoing meetings with you all to give you updates as I am able to provide them. We have had one public meeting, but we'll be doing a number of those moving forward, which of course you all are welcome to attend. We had a series of surveys. Those will also be ongoing, and then hopefully we can do a Facebook Live event, so we were able to get feedback that way. And that's all I have. I'm happy to take questions. I'm also may have run out of time, so I apologize. I wasn't sure how long I had.
Yeah, any other questions? And she is out of time. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you,
And
Emily.
If you have other questions or concerns, you know how to get in contact with me. I bring all of those questions forward, and we actually put those out on the PBI office website so that everybody has the benefit of hearing and seeing the same thing, because I get a lot of questions, so I want to make sure folks have access to the information. Thank you again.
Thank you. We're going to have a design handbook review. Yeah, Barb's gone.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Jay Rankin with MIG, principal in charge of the placemaking study. And what we distributed via Liz just a little while ago, probably about a week ago, I think it was sent out, was the design handbook. So if you recall, back when we presented the design guidelines and their standards and guidelines, which again is a city-administered product. That was actually accompanied with an explainer, we called it, which is this kind of summary, a similar summary document. So we decided to just do the same thing for the handbook. It's 130 some pages in total, the handbook. And so this explainer, which is meant to also kind of serve as a summary, is still 32 pages. It's a lot of stuff. So what we want to do is walk through this really quickly for you so you know it's there. And then we'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to take a closer look both at the explainer and at the handbook document itself, which is still in draft form. So we'll just kind of jump into this. I think we can give our little overview in about 10 minutes or less, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And I think that might be the last thing on the agenda. So hopefully
There's one more thing, but...
Oh, one more thing. Okay. So the first page actually should look kind of familiar to you. We presented this graphic, well, a couple of different times. It was in a presentation, it was on the other explainer. But basically it's starting to outline, if you look at the bottom half of the page, which is up on the screen, maybe I'll use that one. Sort of the difference between the zoning code, design standards and guidelines, and then the handbook. And basically the zoning code is going to provide you with really high-level, form-based guidance, and somewhat on land use as well. So it's going to set bulk claim or height limits, setbacks, what uses can go where. So those are basic things. Then the design standards and guidelines is administered by CPD, Community Planning and Development. They have a certain level of guideline that they're comfortable with and standards being requirements, guidelines being suggestions, and that's administered through the design review process by the city. For the National Western Center, we wanted to have a higher standard yet. And so that's the idea of the design handbook. So what we're encouraging you to look at, what this is meant to summarize for you to some degree, is a design handbook. It's this last piece kind of setting that higher bar for the design we'd like to see on the campus. What also happened is during the design standards and guidelines process, as we were creating that with the city, they're really finalizing that over the next several months. We found that they were uncomfortable putting in really specific design direction, right? We've done a lot of thinking with you all, thinking about those different aspects of the streets and the plazas and how the buildings need to interact with each other and with those public spaces, the riverfront. And those were too detailed. Some of that design thinking that had happened with the partners, with the CAC, with community members at those workshops. And so the design handbook is the home for those more detailed directions. In the next page, you can see an overview. So this is actually the first couple. There's an introduction, of course, that gives kind of the purpose. The next two chapters of the design handbook is the campus framework and then general campus design. And I'll touch those in a second. Then it goes through the character areas of phases 1 and 2. So there's 4 of those, and we'll step through those really quickly with you. And then future phases, which would be the triangle. And since, as we just heard, the triangle, we know 4 elements that have to be included, but we don't really know much else about it. We're waiting until more is developed there, and then that will receive this level of direction as well. As we said, the campus framework, the idea is to provide those overarching pieces so that everyone knows how it's fitting together. It's going to hit on the campus character areas, circulation, mobility, signage and wayfinding, the interpretive framework, looking at, you can't read that one on there, other green infrastructure opportunities and constraints. Next page. So here's just a couple of example pages from the campus framework section. So intersections and decision points. So those key gateways and opportunities around those gateways and the expectations we have for those. I'll use this opportunity to point out we have some key takeaways in the upper left-hand corner of a lot of pages. That's supposed to be the really high-level kind of at a glance. We have some sidebars, which typically are referring you to other National Western Center, maybe placemaking, but other National Western Center related documents that have been developed, because there's so many, as was cited earlier in the evening, and then design considerations. And these are the things that specifically we're trying to articulate in a narrative form, and then using imagery as much as possible, whether it's graphics that we developed as a team, maybe it was other partners on the project, or photo precedents from other examples that we've used throughout the process. So then this is an example of a framework diagram. Really, what it's trying to do is, in the design considerations, oftentimes it'll refer to the adjacency to a street or to a particular type of plaza, a gateway intersection. So this puts that all on a single page. Great. And then general, can you want to say anything?
So I was just going to give you guys a couple of content highlights, just giving you a really good introduction to how the document is laid out. So I think the main takeaway from the campus framework section is that here you're going to find a lot of the compiled transportation maps and circulation, which you maybe haven't all seen in one place before. So it gets into vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle transportation, as well as potential shuttle opportunities, mobility zones where we group amenities for pedestrians and signage and wayfinding and transit. And then the other big section that I think everyone in this group would be really excited about in the framework is the interpretive framework. And so that gets at that big picture, that big narrative story for the campus, and puts it all in one place, describes it really simply, talks about programming and strategies and different events that can happen, which I know you all had a lot of input in.
Thank you, Mackenzie. So next is the general campus design. We'll do this piece really quickly. Generally, those are things that there's not a lot of differences across the campus, especially in phases 1 and 2. Where there are, we use tables and things like that to identify if there's different application in different character areas. So that includes the public space design, streetscape design, intersection, moving forward. So an example page here shows, again, some of the key design elements, using photos in this case, the topic overview, which is another kind of mechanism used in this document to provide design teams direction. Remember, there's all these different designers being selected for different buildings and plazas and spaces. And so the idea is that this document, along with the zoning and design standards and guidelines, helps everyone get on the same page and understand what the intent was, going all the way back to the master plan, and then through the placemaking study. So this is another convention used in the handbook, and this is a kind of a collage of photos of different character imagery. So it has some references to the topic, of course, captions to explain that, and images to help convey what we're trying to achieve. And then finally here, this is a little bit more similar to what we were showing before. We have key takeaways again, the renderings that, again, they're not meant to be prescriptive. This isn't to say this, the design teams that are taking this all the way through construction drawings have to design something that looks just like this. But in combination with the imagery, the key takeaways, and then the design considerations, we're hopeful that it still meets the community's expectations and the intent that was conveyed throughout the process. We have a map of streetscape design, and there's different levels of expectation for the different maps. Intersection design is addressed in this section. And that's done in both map form and in the different design considerations. Signage wayfinding is an example within this section. And we went to the extent of looking at also building signs, so wall signs and building signs, not just signage and wayfinding, which is what I think we typically think of. And then it goes into general building design. So those are things that would be applied, again, throughout the campus, not just in specific character areas. But there are opportunities then, this being one of those examples, where we say certain elements do apply in some character areas and not all. So even in the general section, we have some of that. The next page probably does an even better job. It talks about different roof types that would be appropriate. And again, these are just sample pages for you. Again, please go look at the 132-page document. We encourage any and all feedback and input. But just the overview here for you. Looking at rehabilitation and reuse of existing buildings. So some of those are baked into phase 1 and 2, of course. There's questions about which buildings will be reused and where and how in the triangle. So we tried to provide guidance again that would be campus-wide. But the ones that we're sure about are in phases 1 and 2, of course. Okay. So I'm going to keep going. Festival grounds, and then I'll ask Mackenzie to chime in just on these three, on a kind of a key takeaway that you can look for on these. So on the festival grounds, the content includes all those different aspects of everything north of Betty Cram for the most part. Betty Cram Drive, not the individual, as she sits here. And so that would include the stockyard space, all the large buildings that we were just talking about, that are in different phases of design. Looking at the water tower and the stockyard event center, the kind of plaza spaces between those. And what we try to do is use the diagrams and renderings to provide a kind of a visual of where those things are and how they relate to each other, and then they're keyed. So there's a little circle on there with a letter code and a number. And then those, so you can see those on these examples here this is the Armor Admin Building, and then an Armor Plaza around it. So then on the corresponding pages that are adjacent to this, it goes into those design considerations around the specific elements that we're highlighting. Looking at the festival grounds, that's an Armor Plaza example of how that would tie in. And I'll hand it over to Mackenzie quickly for a quick highlight on the festival grounds.
So these are really the fun chapters of the handbook. I think this is kind of the design detail that everyone in this group has been looking for in past documents, and now we can really dig into it. So a couple of key things to look for in the festival grounds. This is where a lot of the major public spaces on campus are. So you can see how we're addressing flexibility in the stockyards and all the different kinds of events we want to do in Stockyards Event Center and the plaza there, the indoor-outdoor spaces that can accommodate concerts and festivals, a huge variety of things. And then also in this space is that large central link plaza, which goes all the way up and down the campus, which is going to be the major pedestrian connection. It's going to be a great amenity for visitors, including all kinds of paving and planting, movable seating, and again, event spaces. And then an even deeper layer of detail that you can find in this chapter is the historic interpretation. So there are a lot of elements that speak to the stockyards and the history of the stock show. And you can find details about those spaces like the armor building and the water tower and the hay barn, and how they might be interpreted in the future of the campus, and how visitors will be able to learn about the history of the site.
Thank you, Mackenzie. So the next section is the Innovation Campus. So these are actually the structures and then plaza spaces that front onto Betty Cram Drive. So you can see the image here. So we're breaking that out. So it's the CSU Animal Health Facility, the Legacy Building, the Livestock Exchange Building, and then the collection of CSU facilities here, the Water Resource Center, and the CSU Center. So within this, of course, we have similar makeup with a different overview of the character area. And then here's an example of the Livestock Exchange Building and Plaza. Specifically, this is along the rail line. again, just one example, we dive into each of these kind of buildings and nooks and crannies through here. But again, you can see the little icons, and then there's write-ups of each of those. Within each of those, before you advance, Mackenzie, we do have on each of these kind of key plaza spaces, the outdoor spaces, some examples of how that can be utilized. So while we can't anticipate everything that's coming out of the Cultivate programming or the discussions that are happening there, we tried to think about different kind of bigger configurations, whether that be market stalls and things like that, or infrastructure needs that might be needed for things we're not even anticipating yet. So those are examples on the lower part of some of those renderings. We also have, when you look at the plaza here again, just different examples of imagery, design considerations, and interpretive opportunities being called out boxes on several of these pages.
So a couple fun things to look for in this chapter are recommendations for green roofs, urban agriculture. We call for the possibility of community gardens associated with a lot of these buildings. And then there's also a lot of railroad and stock show history that can be integrated here in the Livestock Exchange building and plaza and in the new Legacy building. So a great example of the kind of detail that we were able to get to in this document is we suggest maybe images of the champion steers in the lobby of the Legacy building. So again, you're going to be able to look a lot more at those interpretive elements and how all of your ideas have finally been integrated into the design of the site.
Last quick section here, because we won't jump into maintenance and operations. So riverfront. So obviously a high priority for everybody. I think that's where the design is probably the most nebulous in some ways, but in already working with the horizontal design team, I think we captured a lot of the intent that they were having too. So what we did is try to break it into kind of sections so it's a little easier to talk about and comprehend. So north of the bridge, kind of the central section with the Sheep Bridge, and then south of the Betty Cram Drive Bridge here. And so that overview, again, talks about that character area, what the vision is, what some of the major intent is, and then starts to dive into some key topics. Like one is about existing trees. How can we retain as many of the existing trees as possible? Interpretation of the river, the former path of the river is integrated into that. Looking at, in this particular case, John, you'll like this, the Sheep Bridge, highlighting how important the Sheep Bridge is and celebrating that Sheep Bridge and ideally creating a gathering space adjacent to or underneath the Sheep Bridge, and then having interpretive elements. That's just, again, one example. There's a lot among here, but really trying to integrate all those different pieces of the placemaking study and all the input that the community provided to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think this is the last page. So you want to hit a couple highlights for the riverfront? And we'll be done and you can comment or ask questions.
I was just going to pop back up to the map. So just as a heads up for a lot of these spaces, we divided them in order to talk about them more specifically in their specific uses. So you can see here the northmost and southmost areas are the large drainage areas where we get into open space and regenerative design, green infrastructure, all that kind of thing. And then in the middle portions, you see a lot of the programming that's being suggested for the riverfront, including fun things, again, like neighborhood gardens, areas for games and cafes, seating, an amphitheater. So all those great details and possibilities for events and programming in that area.
So I'll end with, this is a teaser, right? Like there's a lot more in the actual document. This is a little excerpt. But yeah, we're happy to take questions on what you're seeing in front of you, the organization, anything you have.
So, Jay, are there design standards, or does any of this apply, or have you written anything for the triangle?
Yeah, so the design standards and guidelines actually apply to the entire site, not just phases 1 and 2. And then the handbook, we have some really early stuff that we were beginning to draft, and then we realized that we just didn't know enough about like what would be adjacent to what and things like that for the handbook. But the intent is that those would be added to the handbook once there's a little more understanding of what the different uses might even be within the area. so on and so forth.
So Jay, since the triangle depends on kind of the P3 or the what, and how that's programmed and how that works for that private. I understand, you know, it's a big unknown. So what is your process once the entity is chosen, sometimes next year, from the previous presentation? What's your process for like writing design guidelines for the triangle once that's a little more dialed in?
Yeah. So again, just to clarify, the design standards and guidelines do apply to the triangle that were written already and presented.
This applies.
The general design guidance that's provided in the first couple of chapters applies everywhere. The separate document, the design standards and guidelines, applies everywhere, and zoning applies everywhere. What we don't have is specific design considerations and renderings and things like that. And so we haven't determined that. It's a conversation we'll have to have with Gretchen and Eric, honestly. Like, when you get to that design consideration level, is it when a team is brought on board with a preliminary concept? Is it when the concept gets refined more? And so we'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, because Jay, I'm just concerned, like, the campus, the whole thing is unified, and you know, if the triangle comes out as this kind of like other animal, that, you know, that wouldn't be appropriate. So
Yeah, and that's where the streetscape design direction given in chapter 2, is it? Chapter 2 and chapter 3. The signage of wayfinding, the gateway elements, that is consistent for sure. And then we just didn't feel like we had enough at this point to get to a greater level of detail.
Jay, so you just mentioned gateway.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that, and I'm not seeing it in here, where the gateway.
Yeah, it's not in the 32-page excerpt, but if you look at the full document, you'll see it.
To me, that's a really critical element, and it should have its like own section.
Yeah.
Because, you know, as you arrive, like especially when you look at the roads, you're not arriving in phase 1 and 2. You're going to be arriving through the triangle, or you're going to be arriving across
over the bridges.
And so, you know, those bridges and that entry are really critical to, you know, make people feel like they've arrived somewhere, and they're wonderful opportunities for really good artwork. And so I hope it has its own section.
Yeah, and it does have its own section. I would encourage you to check it out. And if you think if it's missing the mark or we need more in there,
and
please let us know.
where is that?
That was an email, 2 emails that I sent to you. There's a link to the entire document.
So, just so you guys know, the document is posted with the meeting materials for this. It's a big document, so I couldn't send the actual document. I had to send a link to the document, because it's 100 and whatever.
132 pages.
Trillion pages. So, about a week ago, or a little more than a week ago, I sent you an actual link to the whole document. And then at the beginning, or yesterday, I sent you this summary document and a link to the document again. And the document is also posted with the meeting materials for this meeting, and it is already up on the site. So you can click on it and download it, read it, print it.
So are those gateway features going to be something that this group can weigh in on and discuss? I mean, how is that going to be managed? Design of those? And when would they be implemented? Would you implement those day one, even in the triangle for the gateway?
So I think it would depend. If it's signage and wayfind, like more traditional signage, that would happen day one, as you kind of described. And this group would have a chance to weigh in. If it's public art being the gateway, or incorporate as public art, I'm sure that this group would have an opportunity, but it's the public art board actually would go through the public art process. If you remember in the cultural plan, there was a public art master plan appended to that, so that would go through that process.
Any other questions?
What kind of feedback are you looking for today? Or what feedback would you like us to have as you continue through the process?
Today was really us answering questions like around clarification. Once you look at the full document, we would love, if you feel like there's something just totally missing that you all have been thinking about that we presented to you at some point, it's not reflected in here, please let us know. It's long, but we're okay making it longer if that's necessary. The design teams might not like that we're moving forward, but that's okay. We want to set the expectations high. And then I think that's the main thing. Are we not getting something quite right, or do you see something that's missing? Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all.
So, clap, okay, yeah. That's a first, okay. Carrie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am passing out some materials, so please take a copy and continue passing it down. I am speaking about Initiative 300. I'm hoping that most of you have started to hear about this measure. It will appear on the May 7th Denver municipal ballot that's coming up in just a few weeks. I'm here on behalf of Together Denver, which is a broad coalition of stakeholders in opposition to Initiative 300. Initiative 300 would allow for indefinite camping in Denver parks and any Denver public spaces. It would allow for people to live and camp in their cars. And it would severely prevent the city from providing public health and public safety services in the community. The coalition that is in opposition to Initiative 300 does not believe that this provides in any way solutions to people who are experiencing homelessness, addressing the root causes of homelessness in our community, and most importantly, Initiative 300 does not provide any new or additional resources to assist people in the community who are experiencing homelessness currently. So you have a number of materials that have been passed out. I do think that this is something that is important, particularly for this group to be aware of because of the significant amount of public and open space that is going to be part of this really amazing new National Western Center, both within the campus itself when we're talking about public plazas, as well as all of the new area that we're hoping to open up along the South Platte River. The coalition in opposition to Initiative 300 includes environmental organizations, including the Greenway Foundation, which is working really hard to restore and protect the South Platte River, and having people be able to essentially live and camp along the South Platte River is not a healthy situation for those people, nor is it a healthy situation for the South Platte River. And then certainly all of the public spaces and plazas along the campus itself. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but at least wanted to bring this issue to your attention since it will be on the ballot and is something that we just want to continue talking about and dialoguing about.
Any questions for Carrie?
Here. Terrence.
Drew.
Here you go, Drew. Hang on. I think maybe a question for you, Terrence. Notwithstanding my personal feelings about Initiative 300, I'm actually on a committee at INC to sort of make recommendations. I have real big issues with it. Personally, I will probably vote against it. However, I'm just curious about the CAC. We're not a nonprofit, which would mean that we couldn't take political stands, we couldn't choose political candidates. But Carrie, I appreciate this, and it's good information, but if the CAC starts, for example, if we were to allow a mayoral candidate to present or something, or a city council candidate, or other initiatives, if we open that, are we open to just what I might call pamphleteering? Is that okay with everybody? Is that something, I'm a little uneasy about just, now I happen to know CRL is sponsoring the No on 300 thing. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But we open the door, where does it stop? Terrence, I put this question to you because you're our political consultant, you know.
I'm actually retired from politics.
I'll let
That's the easy
Terrence-
way out.
I'll let Terrence respond, but Carrie, as a member of this committee, knowing that this is an issue that specifically affects this campus. Right, yeah, so and she's visit Denver and a member of this, called and said, hey, are we going to have something about this? And in discussion with Maria, we said she is a member of the committee and is bringing the information, not asking, you know, this is not this group asking for support or not support, but just bringing information, right? Bringing information to you. So that was the way it was presented to us. She called me and asked me that question, just so you know what the process was. And so, but certainly worth a discussion. I'll let Terrence chime in here as well.
Yeah, and in the past, we've actually had folks come in during this, what I like to call the open mic portion of the meeting. I remember a few years ago, the folks who were lobbying city council to tighten down regulations on where grow houses could be in the city came and presented here. So this is not unusual because this is something that relates to the public good. That's how I will defend it, that this is about the public good, and it actually directly impacts what's going to happen at the CAC or at the National Western Center, as opposed to having a bevy of political people, candidates roll through. I don't know if that really serves the public good of the CAC by having every Tom, Jane, and Mary who wants to run coming. But the whole idea of the public comment section was for people who aren't on this actual CAC or CAC members to raise issues that they thought were relevant.
Sorry, is this the public comment?
We're in the public comment period.
Okay,
Yes.
and that, okay.
So I didn't clearly distinguish that. I just rolled right into it.
But it is listed on that in the agenda.
No, I know we have that period. I'm just,
It's hardly ever used, the public comment period. So I think we're thrown off when people use it. And then we had folks 2-3 meetings ago. I get thrown off because Maria and I are now in this every other month schedule just by happenstance. So maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, I think, who came in? It was about Jim Garcia and some other folks came in to talk about the development. I think that, yeah. So this is not unprecedented at all.
yeah, I guess I'm just like, where are the guardrails? Or are there?
There are guardrails. It's like Justice Cardozo once said about pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. So that's kind of where I am on this. There are guardrails in my head that I know we won't cross. I can't tell you what they are specifically, but I know it when I see it. I can tell you now, politicians coming in doing political things is probably a no-go in my head. So I think that's pretty much it. John, AE, in whatever order you choose. I guess John first, since you get the microphone first.
Terrence, I think you're being gracious about this issue. But I respect that as our facilitator here. I don't know if you remember, but last year sometime, I brought this issue up before this board as a precautionary, as a warning. And I can see where you're coming from, Drew. And I want to be a little more direct and damn the icebergs as far as I'm concerned. This is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. It's a human issue. I agree with you there. After this is over with and the dust settles, we have an obligation to ask our civic leaders who they might be after this election to take this issue on and deal with it in a humane and a positive manner. There's nothing worse than waking up in your neighborhood and seeing transients. And there's different categories of transients. And some of them, excuse my language, just don't give a damn. I have gone out of my way to help people. Down by the Salvation Army Center, we take a lot of stuff down there for the people. And they had an encampment along the riverbank. And I agree with Jeff Shoemaker. You know, we need to deal with this problem because it can get totally out of hand in just a matter of a few days. And I brought the issue up as a precaution to this group last year. I don't know if you remember or not, but it is a very issue that would open this entire campus up to homeless encampments, you know, and it can't be. I don't even remember when John Hickenlooper was mayor and he wanted to set a tent city up here, and we took a strong position on that. So it's a big problem that's growing. It's got to be dealt with. And I say, you know, this is a human issue. It's not a political issue.
You can pass it to AE.
Pass it down, please.
I appreciate the discussion that was precipitated by your question, Drew. I myself have no problem and would welcome folks that are running to represent us to come to the NWCA for the specific purpose. If folks felt there was time or for us to sponsor a forum for the specific purpose for them to discuss what they felt about the National Western Center project and how they fit it into their platform. So just to offer a middle ground. This Proposition 300 came up at the last the last authority board. And John equally eloquently expressed what he just expressed at that time too. And I put my 1.5 cents in saying, recognizing the validity of that and also saying that I would like the National Western Center to look at homeless, a response to impacting the homeless situation as an opportunity. In a creative situation. There's lots of programs that can be done, and that does not mean that I endorse or don't endorse 300. I have reservations myself, and I'm thinking it through. But I want to just say that I feel anytime anybody draws, as you did, the direct connection between what we're facing with the National Western Center in the context of all these issues, I think that I welcome the conversation here where it's placed on the agenda. So just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you. And I'm just going to say something briefly about No on 300. You know, some of you know I have a ranch, but I actually live 99% of the time in Five Points. And so I'm just right down the road here. I live right on Weldon Street. Don't come into my house though, because I'll pretend like I don't own that home. But I live right on Weldon Street. And I was walking down the street about 9 o'clock. Oh, it was not 9 o'clock. It was actually 1900 hours, so it's 7 p.m. About 7 p.m. And I walked kind of quietly most of the time. And I startled a group of guys who were actually shooting up right there on 25th Street as I was walking towards Larimer. And I say this because I have some friends who are going to support 300. And they live in places like Crestmore and Mayfair and things like that. And I told them that, you know, their position on this comes from a point of privilege. Because they're never going to be the ones who have to deal with the fact that they're going to have homeless folks just randomly camping out on the public right-of-ways in their neighborhood. And I said it's going to be neighborhoods like mine in Five Points, Curtis Park, Globeville, Elyria, Swansea that are going to take the brunt of homeless folks camping in the neighborhoods. And it's not safe. It's a public health hazard, and it doesn't actually do anything good for the people who are homeless. And as someone who grew up dirt poor, with not much to my name or my family's name, I know what it's like to kind of be on the edge of society. And things like this may make someone feel good who's never grown up poor, who's never grown up with nothing, but at the end of the day, it's just an easy way to pretend like you fix something that has to do with the problem. And so thank you for bringing this up, and I didn't mean to talk about it. It's just a hot button issue for me.
I have just one more thing, if I may.
Okay.
Paul Andrews isn't here now, but the National Western Stock Show Association has gone beyond by their fall feast. They had set up, and it's only a small thing, they fed several thousand folks, right, and they gave haircuts, a lot of health efforts were made, dental exam and HIV screenings and the whole bit. So there's some effort being made by the National Western Stock Association. And I know it may just be a breeze in the windstorm, but there is some positive efforts to be made. We need to instill, not just defeat this, but make sure that we can come back and create some humane manner in dealing with the homeless situation, because it affects all of us at one point or another.
Yeah, can I just say that my problem with 300 is it will be communities like Woeville and Elyria and Swansea that will bear the brunt of this. And I will also say, in front of my house, there has been a camper parked now over a month, and I didn't realize for the first 2 weeks anyone was living in it. And there's actually people living, they're still there. So, and so I fully understand this, and I probably will be voting no on 300, but I just, when I was, and I didn't realize, maybe as a public comment, Carrie, this is totally appropriate to bring it up. But I think, like, for the main body of our program, we should be careful endorsing
And we're very
campaigns.
we're very protective of the main body of the thing. And just for full disclosure, I mean, since I'm on the board of the Western Stock Show Association, the board of the Stock Show Association is actually opposed to Initiative 300. Okay, we're actually, wow, we're pretty close to being done right at 7:30, and we started 5 minutes late, so it's 7:40. Thank all of you for being here. I plan on being here 2 months in a row, so I'll be here next month. And maybe Maria and I will be here together. Because I just heard people don't believe that Maria and I are separate people. Just a rumor.
Okay. You can say you're adjourned.
We're adjourned.